Welcome to the HAN Network's Candidate Conversations. I'm Josh Fisher, and I'm joined today by Michael Nowacki, who's a petitioning candidate for First Selectman here in New Canaan. We're at Waveny Park. Mr. Nowacki, a longtime New Canaan resident and a former advertising executive who for the past several years has fought to expose corruption in New Canaan and Connecticut state governments. He's had his access to town and school buildings limited. He's filed hundreds of Freedom of Information requests here and had the police even called into town meetings he's attended. But now he's running for First Selectman against incumbent Rob Malazzi III. But before we get to the politics, I understand you have a big announcement to make today, Mike.
I do. I'm pleased to announce that if elected on November the 3rd, there will be a First Lady here in the town of New Canaan, and her name is Lauren Corna, and she currently is living in Phoenix, formerly from Dallas, and her maiden name was Weir, and her great-grandfather painted the picture inside the rotunda of the Capitol building of the United States.
Well, congratulations on those nuptials, or pending nuptials, and we look forward to that. So I want to ask you, too, I didn't know you had a lot of time for your private life because you're so busy in town, whether it's going to meetings and filing paperwork and really trying to fight the corruption you claim in New Canaan. Where do you find all this time, Mike?
I don't get much sleep. And my tie kind of signifies that because it's basically a picture of Good Night Moon. And that sort of tells the story.
So you've spent the years battling the town government here in New Canaan. You've toyed in the past with running for First Selectman or state representative. What made you go through with it this year?
Well, a variety of different reasons, including that I have a son that's at Hamilton, and that he's been living his hockey dream up there, and I was going to stay in the area for a longer period of time than I first thought I was going to, when my daughter is at the University of San Diego, and she just got in April. So, my intent still is to downsize my home because I've got a big home and no kids in there. But, the work I've been doing is not just my work. This is the work of 5 people that spent 4 years getting documents. So while the focus has been primarily on me, what people don't know is that every year we would sit down together with the documents that we had a very difficult time acquiring and sit down and started sharing information about teacher salaries, about the non-reporting of long-term savings from teacher retirements, and that we discovered a series of policies that exist within the Board of Ed, that as the Board of Ed was submitting budgets to the town of New Canaan, they were not declaring these savings because the internal policy says that anybody that needed to retire did not have a requirement to post that information until the 1st of April. Well, that was just as the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen then, so that it never showed up on a agenda for the Board of Education until after the budget was already approved. And this estimate-to-estimate process is a very flawed thing. And having worked in corporate environment, we don't do budgets that way. You do 6 months worth of actuals, 6 months worth of projections. You take the 6 months of the projections and you compare it to the prior year's actuals. And the problem was there were significant flaws, and that this morning there was an early morning announcement by the newspaper that is terribly relevant to tonight's public hearing on the subject of material deficiencies in the operation, in the opinion of the Audit Committee. So now the Audit Committee has come out and said. So a lot of the things that have been said here, a lot of the pipe was really laid by Roy Abramowitz after the 2013 town audit, and that there were significant revenues that were sitting in the books of the town of New Canaan, $10 million worth, that then became the impetus for the Audit Committee to be formed. And then I became a whistleblower of the Audit Committee because I collected all these documents. And I would just say that I've probably had 500 emails with Bill Perrette since July the 10th.
When you say tonight, too, we're recording this on Wednesday, October 21st, here at Waveny Park in New Canaan, and which will appear, this will be, if you're watching this now, you're probably watching this on ncadvertiser.com, and the Audit Committee in town did announce last night, they sent a memo to the First Selectman, Rob Malazzi, saying that they were no longer operating because there are not enough controls, and that the Board of Education and the town are not following the proper financial procedures. Does that make you feel vindicated?
Well, I had a conversation with Bill Perrette on my way over here for this morning's interview because I have not seen the full memo. And this morning, as you know, I copied you on an email that dealt with the subject of asking that the town itself published the entire email on the town's website this morning. And Bill would like to see the town governance post this as a matter of public interest. And he really would prefer not to post it on the Audit Committee site. But I said that if they don't post it, I said, I think you have a fiduciary responsibility, since you were the one that authored this, to allow the public to know about this going into, and I've asked that this public hearing tonight be canceled, because I don't think it's appropriate to hold something involving a bond issue when we don't know, and the bond could never be floated until which point in time that there is a financial affidavit that's filed with the town by the town's leaders, whoever that will be, and that could be me.
Also on Wednesday morning, you called for all of the school board members and all 3 selectmen, including the first selectman, to resign. It's not the first time that you've done that. Do you think that some of this is lost because of how often you've called for resignations of town officials and filed lawsuits in town and other sorts of things like that?
No, I don't. What I feel is, though, that during the course of this campaign from the very start, in my whistleblower activities with the Audit Committee, that I continued to individually approach people in this town. This was not just trying to use the media to get the word out. So I have a wider network of support than what anybody realizes in the town, and that comes from sharing the actual documents with people. All right, the Freedom of Information Act is the equivalent of a citizen subpoena when it's perfectly executed by the lawful requirements of that. But when you have the Board of Education approving contracts in executive session and not attributing votes, that's a violation of the law. And that what people don't know when they run for public office here, whether they're paid or whether they're a volunteer, is that they have what's known as a fiduciary duty. And that fiduciary duty I defined in this email today is basically a responsibility, a stewardship responsibility, to uphold their oath of office. And their oath of office says you got to maintain the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the state of Connecticut, the laws of the state, and the town charter here, which are embedded within the municipal laws that create the authority for a town charter to exist. It comes from the state. So, I just feel as though that this is a long time coming. And again, I have to say that there are other people that are involved in this who have asked to remain nameless because they fear the retaliation that I've suffered in this town. And you know what? It's tough. It's very tough on my kids. It's been tough on me personally, but I believe in the end, the truth wins.
So it's worth it, all of this. You've been basically blacklisted in New Canaan. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, but you know what? Not everywhere. I still have many, many friends. I have many, many people that stop me on the streets that I've never met before. And they said, "Are you this guy?" And he said, "We're with you." People I don't even know.
So speaking of the town charter, as you mentioned before, New Canaan is one of the towns in Connecticut where if you run for first selectman and you don't beat the first selectman, but you get more votes than one of the other selectmen top candidates, and this year there's no one else running against first. There's all incumbents on the ballot. Nick Williams, the Republican selectman, Beth Jones, the Democratic selectman, and Rob Malazzi, the first selectman. So if you get more votes than Mrs. Jones or Mr. Williams, would you serve on the board of selectmen as a selectman if you don't beat Mr. Malazzi?
I'm going to steal a line from Lyndon Baines Johnson. If nominated, I will serve.
So now, I know you filed several lawsuits in recent years here in New Canaan, and I understand you have a new federal lawsuit brewing. Can you tell us about it?
Well, underneath the RICO statutes, and the law is a 28-sentence law that says that for the purposes of this chapter, meaning the RICO statute, it's 28 words, the term scheme or artifice is defined by any scheme or artifice designed to deny an individual of the intangible right of honest services. We believe this whole thing with the budget to budget that I started speaking about, and it's all archived on video on CTN, March 12th, 2013 was the first time I said that the Board of Education's submitted budgets on salaries was $2.5 million overstated. There were revenues of $4 million that had not been reported. So you can't say, if you're sitting in a Board of Finance, because the same dialogue went on at the Board of Finance public hearing. That was the 12th, and the next one for the town council, and went on for the last 3 years. That nobody that's sitting in those chairs could suggest that they have what's known in the legal profession as plausible deniability. And quite truthfully, underneath this RICO statute, intent is not required. Because if you know about this, if you've been given documents as they've been given, that creates a potential for criminal liability for people. That's how serious this is. And we will, when I file the suit as a private attorney general, the beneficiary, and the reason why I'm doing it this way as a private attorney general is so that we don't have to pay a lawyer 35% of the proceeds of the taxpayers that we believe minimally, okay, have paid $80 million more of benefits than they should have since 1989, when this law went into effect in '88. So when you have fraud, fraud does not have a statute of limitations. You go all the way back to, though, when the law was created in 1988. So we started our spreadsheets in 1989. We took $100,000 as average savings, and because they never reported that average savings, that has a carry forward effect every single year. It only gets reduced by the 3% of the union contract. That takes you, by the way, for just $100,000, takes you over 30 years to burn off that money. Well, you start every single year for the last 25 years, and we did this spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet's been given to the Board of Ed, it's been given to the town council. They know what this looks like. And when you total that up across this, and a friend of mine who's one of our whistleblowers just had attended a money laundering ceremony, who's a fraternity brother of mine in Los Angeles. So he has an arm's length transaction relationship with this. And he said, without question, this qualifies as money laundering, because what they did is they took all of this money and they shipped it to ADP, whose computers are in Dallas, Texas. And then when you ship that back across state borders, you have money laundering. These are very, very serious issues, and that we will ask that because the state of Connecticut, interestingly enough, does not have an investigative grand jury system. And the legislature in this state has fought this bill that's been proposed, even in the last legislative session, to create this. And the state's attorney's office has advocated for this because they have no legal authority. The state's attorney's office cannot issue a subpoena in this state.
Interesting.
Fascinating.
It is fascinating. And so we're running a little short on time, but I do have a few quick questions for you. And one is, in speaking of the schools, the school board has a proposal right now. They want to expand Sachs Middle School. There's about 1,200 students there, or there's room at the current building for about 1,200 students. They have over 1,300. They have an $18.6 million proposal. Where do you stand on the expansion project at Sachs Middle School? Very quickly.
I'm going to steal words from a song. Guthrie song, you can't always get what you want in Alice's restaurant.
So, speaking of this, I just have a few quick questions before you go. What's your favorite band?
No question about this. Cream.
And your favorite TV show?
Sunday Morning on CBS.
What's your favorite place in New Canaan?
God's Acre on Christmas Eve. And it's depicted in my home in a beautiful tile rendering that was done by a tile company down in Norwalk of God's Acre. And that's the center of my home.
Wow. God's Acre on Christmas Eve is a special place. Where do you see Mike Nowacki in November 2017, 2 years from now?
Running for re-election.
Yeah. What if you don't win? What's the plan if you don't win in November?
Well, my plan will be based upon if I'm elected to the Board of Selectmen, and if I then have a chance to run for first selectman. If I don't win, then I'll run for first selectman again, because I got to be in the area, because Tim is at Hamilton. He's living his dream. He's only a sophomore there. I gotta go watch his hockey games every weekend. That's what I do. That's why I retired.
Mike Nowacki, always an interesting conversation. Thank you for joining the HAN Network here today at Waveny Park. Good luck at the election in November.
And all I want to say is this is also a very special place. This is where my kids played soccer when they were very young, played softball and baseball. Waveny Park is one of the great places in the town of New Canaan. And if they could just, by the way, put up some screens on some of these cold days, because it is about 10 degrees colder here than anywhere else in town.
Well, that's something you and I could agree on. Waveny Park is a very special place and one of the greatest places in New Canaan. Thanks, Mike Nowacki, for joining us. For the HAN Network, I'm Josh Fisher.